What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TOJ Talks. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPod11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. TOJ Pod, all 32. Everyone knows the deal there. What a week in Jets land. Here to kind of wrap up the week and preview some Jets Bills. Zach Rosenblatt. Flight plan. Yeah, obviously everyone knows Zach. He's a Badlands. He's one of our own now.
Yeah.
Zach, how we doing? Do you have any bumps, bruises from beating the shit out of Mike Florio this week, or what's the deal?
I mean, no, I don't think I would get any bumps and bruises. I don't think he would leave a mark. Yeah, it's been an interesting week to say the least, and I'm
Yeah.
ready for just. I would love a normal week at some point. Like that'd be fun if we could just like go from Sunday to Sunday, normal 3 days of practice availability, get a Saturday off, go to a game on Sunday, and then start all over again. Just like nothing happening besides football.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week. Obviously, I want to get your take. We're going to talk a little Jets Bills here. The second half, the Bills injury report is insane. Even though the one guy doesn't have a head injury listed was knocked out unconscious on Sunday, but that's for a story for another day. I feel for Dolphins fans this week who were told their quarterback should retire when he got knocked out unconscious. Um, Jeff Ulbrich gets the head coaching job. The Jets fire Robert Saleh. It's something that I'll say it because no one else will. You took a lot of shit, back in February and beginning of March or whatever that was, end of January, beginning of February. You don't have 30 sources. Saleh's great, all that different stuff. And we're not going to. I don't have to do a full victory lap, but a lot of I think the concerns you guys brought up in that article kind of showed themselves earlier this year. I think a lot of the energy stuff, a lot of the not maybe full buy-in from the locker room, potentially things of that nature. And Saleh kind of looking a little checked out is kind of what to me was the most striking thing, about the start of the season, especially the last 2 weeks. So what you make of the firing? I know you talked about it on Flight Plan, and I know you've had, you kind of written about it, but, just kind of one final time here before we move forward. What'd you make of the firing and Jeff Ulbrich being promoted to the Jets interim head coach?
Yeah, I think it was shocking. I mean, I sorry, I just I would not have anticipated. Like I did feel like the energy was off. You and I had talked about that. There's weird vibes going on, but that gets fixed pretty quickly. Like if they win that Vikings game, then things are pretty good because they started off so poorly and then they almost pulled it off. Um, and because they fought back, which this kind of been a recurring thing with the Saleh era. It's they start off bad, they fight back, and they either just fall short or they just win. Good or bad teams, like it doesn't really matter. It seemed like it kind of happened a lot like that. It was like you said, it was kind of like the same thing over and over again. And it seems like Woody saw it as being the same thing over and over again. And at the cliche of like insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results and all that stuff. Like, I it's a controversial decision. I get a lot of the criticism the Jets are taking, but I also think you kind of understand. Woody for most of his tenure has done things in a reactive way instead of a proactive way. I would say like the Jets are always like a few weeks, few months, a few years too late to make decisions. You could argue this was too late because if you had such a short leash that you'd fire him after 5 weeks, why not just do it in the offseason is the big discussion point. But, maybe this is the boost they need. Changing the coach doesn't really fix, obviously their problems. They have other stuff to deal with, but one of them they addressed obviously with the Todd Downing Hackett thing. But yeah, I don't know. It still doesn't even kind of feel like it happened, but it felt like they were heading in a bad direction. So, he's the owner; he has the right to do this stuff, and he deserves a lot of criticism, obviously, and he's gotten it. But they needed to make a change. They decided to make the change now instead of waiting, and we're about to find out what that means.
Yeah, I want to kind of just quickly touch on that. You said, mentioned obviously the Jets kind of getting a lot of crap this week. And look, I understand. Look, they're a team that had a lot of expectations. They have not lived up to expectation through 5 weeks, and that's all fair. And Rodgers brings some of it on himself, and the Jets do it to themselves at some point. But I will say that my biggest frustration, again, I shouldn't be surprised by this, but I don't know. I know a lot of the people personally who've kind of done it, and it's a little surprising. And just some of the takes that have been out there this week. I guess where I'm having trouble is Robert Saleh was much maligned. Anyone that was not super high on the Jets this
Yeah.
year was Rodgers' age, which is fair. We've seen kind of both sides of it, where he could play at still an elite level, and we've seen him play at a pretty poor level this year at different times through 5 weeks. And secondly, it was the coach. It was Hackett and Saleh were the two things that I felt like across the board nationally were the biggest talking points on the Jets. Were like, this roster is really good. If Rodgers is healthy, the only thing holding them back is the coaches. And the Jets this week demoted and fired the two guys that everyone's been calling for their job for like pretty much since 18 months ago. And then the
Yeah.
Jets do it. And it's like, well, how, like, why is Nate Hackett still employed? Like, dude, we don't have to count guys' pockets and we don't have to get into like the whole, like, Robert Saleh is going to be making quite a bit of money for the next, year and a half. And I think he probably seemed like he was maybe a little done with the situation and burnt that anyways, based on some of the reporting. So what do you make? Is that just it's an easy talking point to kind of flip flop the points? I just felt like it was a little weird. It's a little disingenuous to be like, hey, you have to fire Hackett. The Jets literally take all responsibility other than he still has a badge to get in the building. And like, they're getting crap for doing it. It just makes not a lot of sense to me.
Well, I haven't seen as much of the crap for demoting Hack. I think the fact that he's still in the building is kind of what they're being made fun of for. But and it's very weird. I don't really understand why he didn't just leave. Maybe he just wants to be around. But like I can't imagine. And Chase Daniel talked about this in a insightful way on the Scoop City podcast, where like you have like normally the offensive coordinator or the play caller is like standing at the head of the table, and now Hackett has to like walk by the guy that replaced him to sit and watch as he leads the team in his job that he had. Like it's very interesting, but I think the solid stuff where you had people saying they should fire him, and then be like, why would they fire him? Like, I think it's just the Jets are an easy target. They're an easy talking point on the early morning ESPN and FS1 and all those talk shows to make fun of the Jets. So, yeah, it's everybody needs a take, and then they need a take based off the other take, and then they change the takes week to week and day to day and all that stuff. So it's kind of like the culture we live in now. And that's why you see stuff like the Florio crap outside of the reporter thing, like just, conspiracy theory, Rogers, all this stuff. Like it's all, they're such easy targets, and, they've kind of put this on themselves in a lot of ways. But yeah, it is a little bit of a double standard. Like you can't say he's a bad coach, they should fire him. If they fire him, and you're like, why'd you fire him? Like so, but that's how
Yeah.
it's going to be. That's always how it's going to be around the Jets. Yeah.
And the one thing I wanted to ask you about a transition to Ulbrich here is, I think one of the biggest misconceptions around this firing and around the promoting of Jeff Ulbrich is this is Robert Saleh's defense, not his team, which is what a lot of the criticism was like, oh, well, this isn't going to fix the offense. And it's like, yeah, it might not, but Robert Saleh was the CEO, head coach type. That was the whole thing, was what he was brought into. Jeff Ulbrich's been calling the plays now for 4 years. I know the story got a little misconstrued in a report last night on Thursday Night Football. Jeff Ulbrich was not in danger of getting fired coming off of a top 3 defensive finish. It was after year one, when the Jets were the worst ranked defense in the NFL. Their owner wasn't super pumped about it. Like, it happens. Yeah. It's not the craziest thing in the world. And Jeff didn't have a ton of success in Atlanta in an interim basis. So like there was quite fair question marks, and he's certainly earned his stripes the last few years. The Jets, the people that made the Jets defense good, yes, it's Saleh's scheme, but they have such an elite defensive staff alongside a really talented group of players. I mean, any 3 or 4, like Aaron Wycott very much could feel like he should be a defensive coordinator soon. Marquand Manuel, Tony Oden, and obviously Jeff Ulbrich wanting to be a head coach. So what do you make of what we're going to see from Ulbrich? I talked about it last night in the pod. I'm not sure he could have done a better job yesterday in his first real press conference, just being like just a dude, like that just played ball, wants to rip your face off, but like has the respect of everybody else in that building, player, personnel person, whatever it may be. What do you make of Ulbrich getting promoted here and into a job he's wanted for a long time?
Yeah, it's obviously not ideal circumstances, and he's going to kind of have to learn on the job. And I'm sure he's going to make mistakes along the way. They're going to piss everybody off because he's never done like the fourth down decisions and things like that. Like it's inevitable that it'll happen where he does something and you're like, why the F did he just do that? And I do think, to your point, and we talked about some flight plan a bit yesterday, I think it's fair to wonder how it's going to look defensively. Like if he doesn't have his attention only on the defense now, because he is going to have to oversee everything. Like he's the head coach. I'm sure he's handing the keys to Todd Downing and to Brant Boyer. Obviously, he doesn't need to touch that. But yeah, he's going to be getting pulled in some other directions. And so That is going to be a big adjustment for him. So I'm very curious to see how that looks. Marco Emmanuel in particular, he's a guy that's been a defensive coordinator before, so you can lean on him a little bit, I imagine. And you mentioned White Cotton and Tony Oden, and Mike Rutenberg, these are really good position coaches. So they can all handle their position groups pretty well while you play call. So I'm not as concerned about that, even if it's fair to wonder how it'll look. But yeah, ultimately, I don't know that he was going to get a legit shot at being a head coach unless the Jets went off this year, and even then, teams aren't bending. They're not dying to hire defensive coaches unless there's some wonderkind like Mike McDonald or whatever. It's usually offensive guys these days or retreads. So I wasn't sure that he was ever, maybe he would get interviewed, but I wasn't sure he would ever get hired. So this is his shot to prove he deserves to be a head coach. And if they're good, even if they don't make the playoffs hypothetically, and he's not kept around as the Jets coach, but if they look like a team that's well prepared, and he's obviously a good tactician and motivator and former player and all that stuff, Dan Campbell vibes, I think. Then you could see him getting some interviews in the next cycle. So this is a big opportunity for him to prove himself. I think he knows it, even if he doesn't want to talk about it. So it's gonna be very interesting to see, especially on Monday. I mean, this is a hard week to get ready on a short turnaround from a firing and all the emotions of this week and all the changes and all that stuff. But if they can come out on Monday night and beat the Bills, then you start to feel pretty good about this team's chances of not going on a run, but at least maybe looking a little better than they did.
Yeah, no, for sure. Obviously they promote Todd Downing, and Downing's called plays before. He hasn't been awful.